Hi everybody, my name is Ian Hillman and I would like to take some time to take a deep dive with you all into Agile project management. And so let's look at it this way. Let's say you're in charge of delivering your company's latest and greatest initiative that's going to change the face of technology, and you out there and you have a software project that will engage and enthrall all your customers and make your colleagues' lives much easier and make the company, millions in revenue. You find there's a great deal of anticipation, excitement is high, expectations are high, and you need to get it done as quickly as possible. So, your business is looking to reap the benefits as quick as possible as well. So the future success of the company depends on you, and all eyes are on you. You cannot fail. And so at first, you're thinking to yourself, awesome, I'm really up for the challenge. You're thinking, well, let's get this thing done. But then you pause for a moment and you step back and you think to yourself, okay, hold your horses. So how do we do this? So you start to talk to your colleagues and to your peers. You spend time searching for best practice, software development and project management techniques. But the options and the approaches are really countless. There are acronyms and methodologies. There's so many of them. Notable ones start to rise to the top. Then doubt creeps in. You're asking yourself, which one should we use? How can I guarantee success? And what if I make the wrong decisions? When it comes to managing software projects, there's a heady mix of options supported by a myriad of opinions. So you'll find voices from the corners of the rooms that are whispering to you, try do it this way. Others are shouting, this is the only way that you can do it. And the rest are just whimpering away, don't manage it at all. Just get it on and get on with it. But in reality, all those voices are actually speaking some sort of truth. But what's important is actually working out what is right for your needs, your team, your business, and your customers. So let's look at it. You'll find that there was a time where software project management sat squarely in one of three camps. There were the heavy frameworks that let you make decisions on how you execute and deliver well, while offering a structure to maintain control and governance. And then there were prescriptive sequential methodologies like Waterfall that would force you to plan lengthy projects and make you understand and commit to all your requirements, the design, the sign-off, complex systems. You'd have to write lots of code and then you start testing. And finally, the less prescriptive but iterative software development life cycle that encourage rapid prototyping or larger systems to be designed, built, and delivered in incremental steps, and each of them building on top of each other. And Agile software development and the Agile project management were actually born out of the inadequacies of the waterfall and the benefits of the iterative approaches to software development and delivery. They actually can trace their roots all the way back to 1950s, where you see thought leadership, in the 70s, where there was even maturity in the 90s and the adoption through the 2000s. So it's been an incremental growth. And you find in 2001, a group of practitioners and experts created the Agile Manifesto. It was really aimed at defining 4 values and 12 guiding principles that seek to embody the spirit of Agile software development and to encourage its evolution. It's definitely evolved since then. So, now you just can't call something Agile because that won't be particularly helpful, because this word, even in a software context, means different things to different people or organizations. There are really many facets and definitions, implementations, and interpretations of it. And each of the bodies that embrace Agile tend to give it its own definition. Suffice it to say that Agile software development and project management are actually a group of related behaviors and frameworks, techniques, and concepts that fundamentally favor the delivery of the right working software as early and as frequently as realistically possible. And I mentioned earlier that Agile applied to software development or project management can truly be different things. So in a nutshell, agile software development takes care of developing great software in a business as usual, or in a project as that type of context. And agile really takes care of the governance and the control required to deliver complex projects, including but really not limited to software. You find that there are many agile software development methods such as Scrum, Kanban, XP, and lean software development. But just as the game, any game, has some sub aspects to it, you'll find that agile is the same, because these agile paradigms do not address the full life cycle of project management that's required in complex projects such as governance, resourcing, financial, explicit risk management, and many other important project management concepts. And for these, you might want to consider things like PMI Agile or Prince2 Agile, and think of it as governed agility. So a question would be, why do we need to be agile? You find long ago, we roamed the land together, to gather food, shelter, just to survive. And they were just simple needs, but they were pretty agile, you could say. And sometimes later, countries and economies started to grow and prosper on the back of the Industrial Revolution. And this was the birth of management and control and the loss of agility. And now we're actually in the information age of the revolution, where businesses employ knowledge workers. And knowledge workers are you, your partners, and your colleagues, your peers, who actually endeavor to create great solutions for customers, business, social, economic, and, solving those type of problems. And knowledge workers apply analysis, knowledge, reasoning, understanding, expertise, and skills to often loosely define and the type of environment and changing needs. And these people are needing techniques that just can't be met by industrial age processes and procedures. And agile supports interactions. Virtually no software project can confidently set out at the beginning and know all that it needs in order to deliver valuable working software without change. And change presents both opportunities and risks to the success of the project. Unmanaged opportunity can mean the difference between a great company and an awesome company. And unmanaged risk is also spelling disaster and ruin. And agile manages change. Adopting agile allows you to be responsive to changing or new requirements. And it empowers development teams to be the experts and make decisions supported by an engaged, trusting, and informed business. It's enabling you to deliver to the customers what they really, really want, because ultimately it puts you and your organization in control of delivering high quality, valuable software that is delivered on customer needs and expectations while extracting a return on investment as early as possible. And agile creates value. There's really a cost to adopting agile. It doesn't come for free. So, transforming to an agile approach for software delivery can be a hard path to follow. But if you internalize the agile philosophy, trend carefully and engage the right team with the right attitude, break things down, make it achievable and realistic, and respond to feedback, you'll definitely reap the rewards that way. And agile emphasizes collaboration. Let's see some of the things you could expect to benefit. You'll have things like speed to market, early revenue generation, regular delivery of real value, protection for your investment, data, and more data. Better product quality as well, manageable expectations, greater customer satisfaction, higher performing teams, improved visibility on progress, predictability, transparency, and confidence, manageable risks as well. And you find success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. That's what matters. And Winston Churchill may never actually had said this, but I think it's a pretty good summation of Agile. We know Agile is the best foot forward for most of the projects out there, and it encourages you to strive for success, but we always iterate and keep building on it. Agile will definitely encourage you to fail, but fail early and move on, because having the courage to continue and to build on the right solution based on insight informed by your customer is what really brings the reward. And the thing to keep in mind is you can tailor Agile to your needs using the method and the governance that's actually right for your business. And whenever you start, be true to the content, the context, and the spirit of the method that you're using. So just keep it vanilla. And if you're starting out, really learn. And if you've been doing it for a while, understand. And if you're becoming awesome, then you apply. And finally, if your business and your projects are complex and interdependent, then you can start to govern. And over time, you and your teams will then start to figure out why it works best for your business. So let's look at the feasibility. So now you're thinking, okay, I get it. How do I actually start? Where do I start? Well, with all good things, we start at the beginning. And with Agile, it's by asking yourself, what business value do I actually want to deliver? And after all, that's why we undertake projects, to actually generate business value. In order to establish if the project is actually worth undertaking to derive the business value, you need to understand whether it is feasible. So, vision. Let's look at the vision. Is your project projected to increase revenue, to enter new market, acquire new customers, improve customer perception, or even make life easier for a given problem that you've actually identified? And with this in mind, you can state your vision, because your vision may come from different sources. Your own bold startup to fix a common problem, business management strategies, or your CEO's pet project, a specific product team, or even your customers' needs. So just try to take a step back from your own shoes and just see what the future looks like with your new product or service in the hands of your customers. That's the way to look at it. Engage your stakeholders, the CEO, product guy, and customers. Workshop it. Don't attempt this in isolation. It's not right. Challenge assumptions and validate arguments. Write it down. Keep it short. Focus on the business value. A good way is to refine it until you all agree with the vision, till everybody meets a common interpretation that states where you're actually heading. Because your vision, if valid, it should rarely change. But how you get there will certainly change. Because people don't buy what you do or how you do it. They buy the why you do it. And this is what creates the emotional connection between your business and your customers. And the vision will just help illustrate that. So the question is it feasible? So feasibility comes in a couple of shades. Typically, you'll want to understand if your vision of a brighter future for your business and customers is both technically feasible and that it's feasible for your business to actually make that thing happen. And if your vision is to make travel to anywhere across the world and in like under an hour, you might even have a problem with the technical feasibility of that kind of a project. So you'll see that, you'd have to think of the science, the physics, the technology, that haven't even caught up with that dream. So your technical solution may not be viable in anything other than just theory. And in addition, if your solution was new, this would go well beyond the idea of a minimal viable product, an MVP. And to test the technical feasibility of your product, consider exploring it further in a discovery prototype project or by running a spike in the early stages of the project. You'll start to know which method to use by thinking of the scale or the complexity of the solution that you have in mind. And some of the best knowledge that some of the teams I've worked with, have gained in understanding technical feasibility, has come from performing a spike. And often it's the simplest solution that wins out. And the second shade of feasibility to consider is whether your team or your business has the skills and motivations to make it work. So if we use it in an example, if you're great at baking cakes at home for your kid's birthday, well, that's sweet. But if you want to now turn this into a business, selling the finest cakes to the world, you need to understand if you can make it scale, handle the business as well, and the production, manage distribution and fulfillment, and take care of your customer service at the same time. And this type of vision might be achievable in the long run, but for now, you probably see that type of a business won't work out. So scale back, think small, take a small little chunk that looks realistic and concentrate on delivering the best small aspiration that you can. And if that manages to engage and delight your customers, get them coming back for more and telling their friends, then scale it up from there using your customer feedback as your guide and your compass. And also you need to know if your project is feasible in terms of budget and time frame. Can your business actually afford to deliver this type of a project? Is the time frame achievable? Time and money are two of the three constraints in agile projects that are fixed. We aim to deliver within a fixed time and within a given fixed budget. And the quality of a project refers to the end product that your customers are actually using and the engineering practices that your team uses to deliver great, robust, and reliable software. Quality is definitely something that we don't shortchange. The quality criteria, on the other hand, can change. And if you're not setting out to build a Ferrari, the product may not really have a high quality perception. And if you're not building space rockets, then the tolerance is attained in production terms it might even be much higher. So just set the appropriate tone and expectation earlier. So now you've confirmed your dream that it's more than chocolate fancy, and you've set about testing your assumptions and proving to people that this endeavor is worth investing in. This is where you are right now. So what becomes your next step? Justification. Now, depending on your circumstances, justification will come in different forms. But essentially, you want to prove that this project will satisfy customers' success criteria and that it has a chance of success and will actually deliver value and it's affordable. So state your assumptions based on your customer need, then validate. The lean startup gives guidance on identifying and proving that your product is needed by your customers and will create value. So write, test, and validate your business plan. Now, this looks nothing like the ones your bank, your business or finance majors told you to produce. Don't use them. Don't use that style of, they'll be out of date before the ink is actually dry. Instead, check out the business model canvas. And this is essentially a short form business plan that keeps you focused on your value proposition, your customers, revenue, and the costs. So use it to validate if you have a business that will actually work. I remember ignoring this advice once and spent some time writing a 50-page business plan, and it got me nowhere. All the assumptions that I had made were truly unfounded, and all the projections I made couldn't even be validated. And it was a painful and expensive experience that taught me to never do that again. And if you're in a mature business with portfolios of projects that are being delivered in a complex environment, then financial modeling then starts to become necessary. And if you must do this only after you've proven the above. So once you've built your MVP, your minimal viable product, there might be a case for creating a more traditional business plan at that point. So if you have to go for funding or selection within your company's portfolio of competing products or some of your resources, this will be a business plan that is based and informed by the tools that are used, and it will be lighter to write it. And in any case, these tools are the living and breathing artifacts. Use them as your guiding anchor They never static. Refer to them and revise them as your project or your business are actually evolving. And once you have your justification and all your stakeholders are on board with it, you will be on fire. The feasibility phase is typically performed once in the life of your project. You may find you might revisit the vision and the feasibility of the project, especially if your data, your customers, your market, or your business indicate so. And at the very least, these things will be your guiding lights throughout. So what will be the next step? Initiation. Well, awesome. The decision has been made. The project has the green light and you're ready to build. Well, nearly. I know. You're probably thinking, come on, really? Already? You're thinking, if we don't do this now, we probably won't ever do it. Let's get the show directly on the road. But consider this. Agile is nothing if not about delivering value early and often while delighting your customers along the way. So taking some time to figure out the best way to deliver your project is the best laid foundation for success. Think of the team you find in sports. By thinking about your favorite team game, you'll be able to recognize key roles that enable the team to perform the way that they do. Traditionally, you'll find a manager, a captain, and the rest of his squad. And outside of that, you'll find coaches, physios, nutritionists, and an assortment of supporting staff. But if we look at the game of, like, for example, rugby, there's a team within a team, the players that make up the scrum. And this pack is made up of designated players whose job it is to win the ball back and to continue playing. And when a scrum is actually in play, the players from each side that work with no leader, you'll find as a single unit as collaboratively, communicatively, and efficiently as possible to actually get the ball back into possession. It is the game of rugby that inspired Jeff Sutherland to name the software development software methodology Scrum. And Scrum is not the only software development method in the Agile playbook, but it is the one that best describes the Agile concept and the behaviors of working together as a team, motivating individuals, creating trusting relationships, self-organization, servant leadership, communication, transparency, and collaboration. Your team will be formed largely by the circumstances that you find yourself in. You might even have developers that are available to you. You might have some, but some may be familiar with it, some not. They'll have varying degrees, and you may want to actually hire a new team or partner with a third party, and other roles will be required. But we will actually start to discuss that later. And it's been said that if you form a development team, you've actually chosen the technology, because depending whether you're bringing your team together, they'll come with specific skill sets. So think carefully how you form your development team and whether you really who and what you need in terms of evaluation before you get to this point in your journey. And this brings us to cross-functional teams. Teams work best when they're working together. So when individuals patch into getting the job done, regardless of their titles, trying to build a team that is self-sufficient and individuals that take on more than one role is an important part. So build an environment, a culture, a relationship center, a place where your team can deliver unencumbered by the constraints or restrictions. Give the team the tools, the people, the resources, and the space to be effective and performant. So keep team sizes to no more than 7 or 8. And if you have a need for many more developers, split the team into multiple new teams. You'll find each team might then be responsible for a given functional area. And if you have multiple teams in multiple locations, consider holding a scrum of scrums. And where these are numerous in complex environments, use Agile project management and ensure that the team, the business, the stakeholders, and even the customers have access to one another. and ensure that they communicate and collaborate and remove anything that actually gets in the way of the progress. The daily communication is the best cure for the project ailments, because when people speak, that is when they're actually starting to get stuff done. So you're going to have a project brief. So in the feasibility step, you've actually figured out the why of your project, and you've probably built your confidence to forge ahead with your startup or to go back, and proceed. And the project brief is actually the living document that brings together the why, the what, the when, and the who. It's living because as you progress, your knowledge, your understanding, and path really may change. So to leave this document just written once and never return, it will consign you to one point and one thought in time. And in an agile world, you'll find that your point in time reference will change weekly or even daily. And so it's important to actually keep this fresh. Your brief should be kept fresh. A great tool for encapsulating and maintaining your project brief is something that Jonathan Rasmus calls the Inception Deck in his book, The Agile Samurai. And here you'll find great advice on ensuring that everybody that is interested in, affected by, or involved with the project is actually on the same page. The greatest enemy to delivering projects is in having an unclear, inconsistent, or just plain different understanding of what the project is and what requirements are actually to be satisfied. And if even one important stakeholder has a different understanding or view of what you're doing, the consequences can be substantial. Because a good project brief communicates, one, a common and agreed upon expectation between the stakeholders and the team members. A second thing is an understanding of the project with the same understanding across all parties. The third thing, the goal, the vision, the objective, scope, and the project context. You have a lot of good information for the brief gathered from feasibility, and the project brief will help you to define and find the answers to search, to the searching questions. And it will bring together stakeholders, your raison d'etre, high-level scope, risks, target solution, budget, timeline, expectation, and all the priorities. Once a colleague stopped me in a corridor and he asked me where he could get the project brief of the project. And I said, yeah, we don't need a brief, we're agile. And he looked confused as if he was questioning my sanity or my authority. And he was actually right to do so, because before you proceed, ensure that you have everyone on the same page, workshop it, ask the difficult questions, and nail it up somewhere where people can stop, read it, comment on it, and help revise it. Another thing to look into is the culture and the way of working. Because the way your business works, and the way the business works is definitely culture and the way that it has to get stuff done. You need to know this. So agile, by its very nature, may challenge some of these ways of working that your business has actually cultivated over the years. And don't expect agile to be implemented and, for everyone to lovingly adopt it from the offset. Because some people may find it confusing and view it only with dread and fear. And some people may openly refuse to actually engage in it. And these are challenges and perceptions that you must overcome. But in your early days, don't go around, waving the agile stick, beating up everyone and telling them to listen to it. Try to build trust, adoption, engagement. And you can wave proverbial sticks and you'll find that it will earn you a lot of negativity. And if you want to turn it around before suffering considerable pain, as you set out on your path of adoption, tread carefully, respectfully, and with a lot of empathy. And if you're in a creaking old traditional business, perhaps it won't be the best approach to get the whole business aligned. So start small and incrementally, build it. Just start with your team. And once you start delivering quicker software with better quality than ever before, you'll see that people will start to notice and they'll want to come and play your game. And when they do, offer them the ball, take them out for a coffee and, ease them into your new world. Just help them together with your team. And now that they know what the project is about and your plans for agile adoption are actually agreed upon, let the team then decide on how they want to behave and operate as a team. Guide your team to identify the agile concepts. Guide them to get those techniques, the behaviors, the frameworks that you feel are fit and they need to know. Take requests from your team members as to what requirements they have to help them perform as best they can. And some of these requests you'll be able to resolve immediately. And others, you may need to get budgets or outside help. So do what you can to actually make it happen. And these are the first steps to becoming a servant leader. So consider organizing some appropriate training in the concepts and techniques that your team is choosing to adopt. And you'll find it's the best way to ensure that all of your team members, even stakeholders, are on the same page and that they get the same message. So work with a supplier or organization that can tailor the offering to your needs. Be prudent. Nobody will be an agile ninja, after a few days in a workshop learning how to become agile, because your path will be long. The word become is quite defining. Only when you truly embrace agile will you see its value, and it should really excite you. And if it excites you, then go and excite others too. And now that your team has agreed upon the concept and the techniques, had their wishes fulfilled, and are in agile training, turn your team's attention to themselves and what they expect from you, the business, and one another. So define some ways of working within. Build trust, relationship, and expectations. The wow is no war and peace. It should be short and to the point, like between 7 and 10 bullet point sentences. And these sentences state clearly how people behave, communicate, collaborate, support, deliver, and perform together. And it should also state what the team expects from the business. Agile is as much a mindset as it is guiding principles and concepts. It helps you develop in the way you behave, think, negotiate, interact, communicate, perform, and the way you improve as well. And it relies on motivated individuals supporting each other to reach a common aim, basically together as one. And there's an African proverb that is similar to that. There's a lot to be learned from the African proverbs. And let's look at backlog. Have no doubt in your mind that there's uncertainty that is involved in your project. You can't possibly know exactly what it will take to build the right product for your customers so early in its life. So you can't gaze wistfully into a crystal ball and protect the future actually in this way. So the backlog or product backlog is where you require, where your requirements actually live. Because Agile favors the writing of short, pithy statements that capture the essence of a requirement. And the backlog is simply a long list of entries, each entry defining a single, discrete requirement as a user story. And from now on, we'll be using the word user story and not requirement. So you're probably asking why. And that is a good question. For what seems like forever, stating the features or facets needed in a software project by a customer has always been referred to as a requirement. That word has an interpretation that has no value in Agile, because you'll find the Oxford Dictionary defines it as a thing that is needed or wanted, or a thing that is compulsory, a necessary condition. And unfortunately, if we set out defining what our solution should be, stating that things are compulsory, we'll end up in trouble. It's too easy to say that all these user stories are compulsory. And if we take that view, we run the risk of running over schedule and over budget in the attempt to deliver all of the given scope. And it's not a problem to say that for this product, these stories are needed for the solution to be viable. We just want to avoid the interpretation of that particular word. So always write stories from the perspective of a persona, because a persona represents a user or stakeholder or solution of the solution. And it's a good idea to develop these persona before actually starting a backlog. Because at this stage, only write short, short, simple statements that basically suggest a reminder to have a deeper conversation about the user story when the time is right. Because real people think in terms of tasks that they need to get done to achieve a goal. So write your stories from the persona perspective and in terms of what they need to get done. You don't need to write the full backlog. Just write as much as you can imagine your customers will need for your product to be viable. You'll actually discover later on through the life of the product that the user stories will change, become more or less important, or can be deleted even completely. Releasing often, getting feedback, and assessing what is a priority will inform this behavior. So don't write stories in isolation. Engage your team, your stakeholders, and your customers. We can't say this enough, because stories can be outdated at any time in the life of a project, but should avoid to be, you want to avoid changing it once development work has actually started on it. And some of your stories may be considered epics. And these are large stories that cover a lot and will be broken down closer to the time of delivery into smaller stories. So consider using the INVEST model, a checklist for validating the quality of a good user story. Anybody can add a story to the backlog, and it should be placed at the bottom or in a specially created parking lot. And this added story serves as a prompt to discuss finally with the team and the business. And if the business and the team support it, it can then be estimated and prioritized. And you can also consider those parts of the system that are most risky. So if you have a user story or feature that's complex, it might be new or it's technically unknown, prioritize these to the top of your backlog. And this way, you won't be attempting to deliver the challenging and critical parts of your product just weeks before your first release. So once you have a backlog that fulfills your needs, you can then estimate the stories in it, rank them in order of priority, and build a release plan. Then you have to look at high-level estimation and prioritization. And high-level estimation is the process of sizing your backlog. How big is the project? What value does it deliver? Prioritization is the process of deciding which stories are actually most important to you, the viability of the product, and the interests of your customer. Because we want to deliver the highest value items earliest so that we can deliver the most value to the business, get feedback from the customer, and to not sweat the small stuff. And the output will be an ordered backlog that is ranked in priority and is then sized appropriately by approaching it this way, because the stories at the top are considered most valuable. We want to deliver the most valuable items as early as possible, like we mentioned. And there are many techniques for sizing and estimating. But at this point, you just want to get the good indicative feel of the size of the story. So use t-shirt sizes, relative sizing, ideal days or story points. You won't really have all the available information at this point either. And it's okay. Just run with it. Engage your business stakeholders, engage your project managers if you have one, and the team that will be doing the work. Because we want those that will be designing, developing, and testing to work to size it. Because the best people to estimate are actually the experts. And the team may start to break stories down into smaller parts. And if this happens, write stories that are more granular, but they should be discrete. The team may start to rank some stories, as naturally you'll find some things start to get delivered before others to support the technology or given user journey. And between you and the team, you'll be also starting to find holes in the backlog that actually need to be filled. So fill those holes with new stories and estimates and prioritizes appropriately. Prioritization is most easily performed using the Moscow analysis. And Moscow is a simple technique that helps you decide which stories are a must-have for your product to be successful. So you may do a prioritization pass before estimation begins, but the sizing of certain elements may also determine a decision on priority and real business value. So play estimation and prioritization off of each other, but don't squabble over it, because no two stories can be as important as the other. The story at rank 1 is more important or valuable than the story at rank 2. That's not what you want happening, because a great way to demonstrate the importance or value of a story is to add a monetary value to it. And if, for example, story A is thought to bring in $5,000 of extra revenue and story B might attract like $100, then story A is more valuable. And equally, if story C saves the business more than story D, then story C is more valuable. So once you've sized your backlog, you'll be left with a number. And when we come to release planning, that number will help us understand how much can be delivered by our team within a given time frame. So remember that you don't need to know all of your user stories upfront. Also, remember that it's not necessary to deliver all of your stories before a customer sees your product. You want to remain agile, and that means only creating what you need when you need to, because you want to waste as little as possible and respond to changes in customer needs and market conditions. A roadmap in this case will help you lay out your product and plan your objectives for the next 3, 6, 7 to 12 months. Yeah, and that brings us to the roadmap and the story maps. And you find that the roadmap is exactly as it sounds. It offers the same as a roadmap of a country. It's basically detailing the relative position of the cities to each other and the routes that actually can be taken to take from city to city. So from city A to city B, or feature X and feature Z. It doesn't really tell you which route you should take or how you should get there. It doesn't tell you which road of transport you should be using, but it might illustrate options to take the highway or to take the train. And you find in a city there are many roads, many buildings, parks, services, and facilities, and all features of a city. This is also true of the roadmap of your product, because at this level, your roadmap shows major goals or milestones to be achieved, and a goal is a logical grouping of themes, features, and user stories rolled up in a consumable view that demonstrates tangible value. And the roadmap of the software product shares these views and communicates your intent. And it doesn't necessarily show you how or when features will actually be delivered, only the relative value of the goals and the features to be brought to you and your business. And one great way to demonstrate a roadmap is to generate a story map. And this tool will indicate customer value prioritization, and it lays out the backbone or essential building blocks of your product. The walking skeleton is actually hanging off the backbone and illustrates the features that actually make it an MVP, and all the other features are what add further value and importance to the system. The story map lays features in relative position to each other, and it's an awesome visual tool, the story map. And it's worth noting that after carrying out the story mapping exercise, your backlog may need to be refined. And this will truly be apparent when stories have been split into multiple stories, identified as redundant, newly created, or as a higher or lower priority than previously thought. And the story map is another artifact that is continually revisited and revised, and the initiation phase is typically performed once in the lifetime of your project. However, many of the tools and documents you created will be revisited and revised. You'll revise them throughout the project. It's very essential to do that. And with that out of the way, you'd have to go straight into understanding product iterations. So basically your team is in place, they're motivated, you have an engaged business, your initial planning is done, you're now ready to build your dreams. And we talked earlier about some of the tools, some of the techniques and concepts that Agile subscribes to. There are many resources already available that do a great job at laying the foundations for delivering an Agile software project. So just pick one, keep it vanilla, and grow into your Agile journey. So to help shorten the trauma in deciding the right Agile software development methodology to start with, I would recommend, Scrum, and only Scrum, because the temptation will be there to use elements of other methodologies. Don't do it yet. Save that kind of change until you've lived and breathed Scrum for 6 or 12 months. Then, if either you've determined that alone doesn't work for you and you want to mature as a team, steadily introduce new methods, techniques, or frameworks in that breadth. Because I choose Scrum as a recommended approach for new teams that are adopting Agile, because they adopt the basics that are built in, and it's very popular and has many good quality communities and resources online. You can find lots of information in books and different training rooms, and it will serve you well even for the smallest of teams. And at this point, we want to look at important aspects of software delivery that you and your team and stakeholders should also take serious and keep in mind. And one of them is adaptive planning, because planning in an Agile project is an ongoing process, and we do some initial planning up front, just enough to understand what we know at any given point. And our initial plans will be loosely defined and flawed. And then we iterate our planning, adapting to new information, planning in greater detail just before we actually enter into delivery, responding to change in scope. And this is one way to minimize waste, because only putting effort into planning when we need to, that's how we do it. We just try to do it when we need it, and the team and the business, or some of the informed or authorized representatives, such as the people like product managers, should actively plan together, because the team are the experts that will deliver the product. And so the product manager will help to guide the needs of the business, and the estimates for user stories will be less accurate the further out that they are from being developed. And so, for example, epics will attract high-level estimates that will be based on a lot of unknowns. And well-defined and granular user stories that are estimated just before sprint starts will be much more accurate. And there are many estimation scales that you can use. So basically use the technique that feels most right for your team and the right stage of planning. Planning poker, ideal time, relative sizing, story points, or t-shirt sizes. Because when sizing a story, one size really does fit all. Because all stories should be sized using the same technique and encompass all elements such as the design, development, testing, and refactoring. So when you come to do iteration planning for a sprint, certain tasks can be created which all contribute to the completion of the story. So always factor risk, unknowns, outside influences, your team's capacity, and ever-improving velocity in planning. And if user stories that were taken into a sprint were not completed, we do not extend the time box. And these unfinished or unstarted items are then put back to the top of the backlog and taken into the next sprint. So always plan to deliver the least amount of required to achieve a given goal. So identify techniques to prune features, reduce waste, and find the real value that can be realistically delivered with your time-constrained resources. And it's also important, in terms of story creation, when you elaborate on them and when do you need them. You don't need full story explanations for features that are 6 months away from being delivered. Writing them at the beginning will truly be wasted effort, because when the need starts to disappear from the scope, it will be a waste. So write your stories at most 2 iterations before they're actually needed. Reducing that time frame to 1 sprint is actually preferable in this case. And let's take your time in sprint 0 to set the scene. So in 2 weeks, you'll start development. It's now time to take enough of the stories from the top of the backlog that could potentially get delivered on sprint 1. So you might take 10 or 15% more if you're unsure on your velocity. And these one-liners can now be expanded into truly valuable documents with scenarios, acceptance criteria, and wireframes. So if the wireframes haven't been created yet, then it's time to do so. You might find as you review these candidate stories that they actually need to be broken down, and perhaps there were epics that couldn't possibly be completed in a sprint. So if you break stories down, re-estimate them with the team. And a good story follows the following rules. It's written in a common format. For example, as I once, so that. So include acceptance criteria that the story must meet to be considered as acceptable to the business for sign-off. So uses language that the business, everybody should use a language that the business and the customers understand. So it should follow the investment model, includes all supporting documents to inform the developer, the designer, tester, wireframe, technical design overview, and other assets. And it should meet the standard definition of done criteria. And now the ball is rolling. We're at the point where we're talking about sprinting. So whether you call it a sprint, an iteration, or a time box, each incremental delivery of your Agile project is time constrained. The time box doesn't shorten and it doesn't lengthen. It's not its purpose. So focus on 2-week iterations at the beginning. You might find that 1, 2, or 4 weeks suits your business model better. And once you choose a length, don't change it. You'll want to maintain a regular cadence or a sustainable pace. So this means that the team and the business focus on delivering regular software without mad dash overtime, being employed to get the job done and releasing potential, shippable increments every 2 weeks. You want to be doing this consistently, working in small increments, because this has a huge benefit, and it means you're only focusing on the immediate future of delivery. And with new input, feedback, and learning, you can respond to change within a short iterative cycle. And at the beginning of a release, perform a sprint 0. And this lets the team, the business, and your project release get geared up for a set or mindset of successful delivery. So draw out the base technical framework and architecture that will support the foundation for the release. Set up environments, accounts, and tools. You should perform spikes to understand difficult or unknown problems, and then elaborate your user stories in readiness for sprint 1. And sprint 0 is about getting prepared, literally. And during a release, keep refining the backlog. And as you understand more or learn something new, you'll find that your priorities will change, new requirements may unfold, and what you previously thought was a great feature might end up getting removed entirely. So don't start work that has no chance of actually completing within a sprint. And if it can't, break it down into smaller chunks, and don't start new work when previously started work has not been completed. You'll end up creating no value by starting lots of things that can't be considered complete. And further, avoid context switching. This is the activity of starting one task, getting disturbed, starting another one, and it's most problematic, especially how in its not completing things done. Limit the amount of work that is in progress by the team at any one time. For example, if you have 3 developers and 1 tester, you could put a work limit on the developers and on the tester. So never add more work to a sprint after it's been planned, and never stop a sprint partway through, because the exceptions to this are if you performed faster than expected, then you can consider taking the next story from the top of the backlog as long as it's suitably prepared. And for example, if the sprint is performing so badly that it won't complete, this would be an exception, and this usually only happens where there's been a catastrophe or some kind of description in the story. And another situation would be if the sprint objective can't be supported because of the immediate changing needs of the business. And if you do cancel a sprint, do it gracefully, take time to refocus and start a new sprint as you would with any other sprint. So towards the end of a release, consider a final release sprint. No new features should be written, because, some bugs can be cleaned up, preparation can be made to actually release a new vision or a new version of your product to the customers. And that's not to say you can't make incremental customer releases in the meantime. It's just that this is a controlled measured and sustainable release mechanism. Because at the end of a release, you might consider a 1-week sprint. And in this sprint, you might work with the team to break down some new ideas and to figure out some new technology. These are great tools that benefit the business. And it gives the team some breathing space to think and to be creative. And it's not for goofing off, and it will still create value. And equally, everyone needs a break. So taking a vacation at this time helps keep your cadence and your velocity in good shape when you are in mid-release. That's a good time for this. Yeah, and this will bring us to quite an important thing, which is, defining done. And really defining what done really means is very important, because there are many versions of done within the life of your project. What it means to be done with a story, with a release, or even the whole project. It all boils down to what you, your team, your business will consider as complete, at least to the right level of quality to satisfy the readiness to ship. So for your team, the definition of a done story will be something like all code complete, peer-reviewed, meets the defined acceptance criteria, unit tested, and pushed to your code repository. So to enable the passing of a story from designer to developer to tester, definitions of done will have to be accepted by the next person in the chain. So your product owner will have expectations as to what this means to them in order to release the product increment to your customers. And in any case, everybody must be aware of what done means and be a responsible party in ensuring that its meaning is met. So defining your definition of done, communicate it, agree upon it, and evolve it. Done. Then there's continuous measurement. Because if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. The same goes for improvements. The need to gather empirical data in an agile project is almost as vital as having blood course through your, moving through your veins. Because how do you know what needs managing, correcting, or improving if there's no data? Well, simply put, you'll be relying on gut feel and unsubstantiated guesswork, which falls apart pretty quickly, especially when it's under scrutiny. And depending on who's doing the scrutinizing, this can be a rather uncomfortable place to be. So from the outset of your project, ensure you know how you're going to demonstrate progress and by what measure others are going to be viewing your success. And fortunately, Agile comes loaded with useful tools and techniques. The first thing to do is to go back to the Agile manifesto and then type in the following words into your favorite, word processors, blow them up to something like 96 points, print and apply to the wall for everybody to see those words. So, which is your greatest demonstrable power in delivering software is to show it to people working, doing what it's supposed to do. Not only will this make your customers happy, it will earn your team great respect and grease the wheels for greater adoption through the business. And here are some other tools. You have the daily stand-up. So there are a few variations of the ceremony, but the essence is to have all team members talk to each other face to face. You should keep it short, keep it focused, and keep it light. And if anything needs discussion at great length, park it for a longer conversation between those that are needed after the stand-up. And because if impediments are raised, write them up like a story, add them to your backlog, and get them addressed as soon as possible. And anything that is impeding your team slows down their progress and will be demonstrable in reduced, velocity and software that does not, meet expectations. And velocity is a historical tool. It's a little like those financial warnings that you get that say past performance is no guarantee for the future performance. But in Agile's case, we do hope to achieve a team velocity that is largely smooth. It's velocity that allows us to project future performance and confidence in our plans. There may be influences outside your control, which might lower the number of story points output for a given sprint. And if this happens, you'll probably be able to recover. And never use velocity as a stick to beat your team, because that will win you no favors. One thing for sure is that velocity will be erratic for the first 2 to 4 sprints, and somewhere within that time frame, you should start to see consistency and stability. And if your velocity is wavering from one extreme to another, you've got a problem which you'll need to fix with your team. Then there's the burn down chart. The burn down chart, because this one is a thorny one. You'll have to find out more and do some research about the burn down chart and agree as a team and business which one is working for you. Because the reason that this one is thorny, well, not one resource out there tells the same story. One thing agreed upon is that it will show within a sprint or a release how you're performing against your time box. And if maintained daily, it will show if you're on track or if you're deviating. And some teams use it to represent how much value is left to be created. And more often than not, others will use it to show how much work is actually left to be completed. And the former is a celebration of success and value generation, and the latter is less inspiring and motivating. And when you look at the burn-up chart, if you must show, completion rates, use the burn-down chart for that. But using the burn-up chart allows you to show how much value has been created and how much more value you're planning to create by the end of the sprint. And a much more motivating tool for a team to both demonstrate to the business what has been done and what they still have their sights set on. And in any case, use the charts to spot where progress is not tracking as expected and look for patterns or deviations and get on top of them to fix the underlying problem as soon as possible. Understand and update them daily for sprints, and once at the end of a sprint for a release version of a release version of the charts. And then we have the task boards, because these are great visual radiators for demonstrating value being created. And when updated daily or at any point in the day, they immediately show progress being made. And if this is combined with Kanban, this offers great tools for visualizing flow and blockages in the system. And if you can see that lots of development has been completed, but testing is not as productive, you can see the problem happening and you can respond appropriately and swiftly to it. So keep these measures, the charts, and other tools visible, and preferably loud and proud on the wall for everybody to see. The team, the stakeholders, and other interested parties can immediately see the status of a project. It makes things transparent and serves as a valuable communication tool if you can put these artifacts on the wall and use tools that are shareable and collaborative, and make sure that those who want access actually have it. And that will take you to the next level, which is continuous improvement. Because throughout your Agile life, seek to identify and learn where improvements can be made. Lessons are not captured and learned at the end of a project. It's like passing your driving test and tentatively taking your first drive without an instructor, when the instructor is not there, and you'll know what works and what you're supposed to do. But over time, you'll tailor your driving skills and capabilities. You'll find yourself learning new techniques as well, and you'll even pick up bad habits, So look for those things, understand them, and find ways to improve. Because there are many opportunities for identifying what is not working and apply remedies to these things. The built-in approach to this in Agile is a retrospective, and this is the primary tool for reflection and adjustment. Because at the end of every sprint, take time with the team to improve how work gets done, how quality is delivered, how efficiency can be maximized, how waste can be minimized, and how capacity is increased. Because when you identify measures for improvement, don't be tempted to fix all your problems right away. Just identify the ones that will have the most impact and can be implemented in the next sprint. Measure and observe. Because if it had the desired impact, that's the time to lock it up. Write it up into your ways of working and your definitions of done. And if it doesn't work, think again. Any lessons learned that don't get put into the upcoming sprint can be parked and prioritized for attention in the next sprint. Then tailor the process. Just remove anything that's not working. Remove impediments, because your maturity as an agile team will know no bounds if you actually let it. And then we'll start to go beyond agile project management, and it's important to know what happens after the project is delivered. So support, maintenance, these are key to ensuring that once the project is actually in customers' hands, it remains performant, because customer feedback can be factored into future releases and the customer issues are dealt with appropriately, because the project is a unique time constrained endeavor, and the product it delivers has a life after the project team has actually been disbanded, and ensure that you're capable of supporting the product once it is live. And agile projects coexist with more traditional approaches. So that would mean balancing the requirements for budgetary control and stakeholder visibility with the agile aims of flexibility and responsiveness. And a governance framework or agile governance model is used in junction with the standard agile processes such as Scrum. They work in two specific ways. They provide a wrapper for the agile project by clarifying the process that occur outside of the development iterations. And this includes providing clear criteria for the successful completion of the project, initiation, and proper validation of the decisions and plan. And they shift the emphasis of specific parts of the standard agile process and highlight particular principles and techniques that need governance and support the governance itself. And in today's ever-changing world, organizations and businesses are keen to adopt a more flexible approach to delivering projects, and they want to become more agile. But for an organization delivering projects and programs, and where existing formal project management processes already exist, the informality of many of the agile approaches is daunting, and it's sometimes perceived as too risky. And these project focus, agility within the concept of project delivery, agile project management. That's what it will be, and this is what's important to learn and grow with the adoption of agile. Only ever do what your team is comfortable with. Ensure their voices are heard and act on their requests. Encourage your team to adopt new and more valuable techniques when the time is right. Negotiate with the business and encourage them to understand what it means to be an agile organization. So let's look at some of the productivity hacks that you probably didn't know about. So, do you find yourself procrastinating for most of the day? Do you struggle with effectively managing your tasks and most of your time? And do you frantically then search for some kind of tips that are online and, looking for ways to be more efficient than productive. Well, but just retire those guidance tips, because it's time for us to now look at ways that we can incorporate hacks that actually work and yield the right results. And productivity is your ability to complete a task within a set time. It's absolutely utmost importance if you seek to maintain a healthy work-life balance, because you have a defined set of hours within a day. You don't have much time, and to make sure that you finish your tasks within that time, it is not entirely like a straightforward thing. And so with our already so occupied lives, we find it challenging. Each person, will have the same challenges to complete what you hope for. And the trick is just squeezing in as much work as you can within a special time slot without letting it overpower or overwhelm you with the other tasks that you have. So prioritizing is essential to aid productivity. So before planning anything, prioritize the tasks that you have ahead of yourself. And you'll find procrastination is the nemesis of productivity, like it said. And we all have a habit of postponing, especially most of the work, and wasting our time by spending it on things that are unproductive and non-productive practices. And there are countless habits that make us very inefficient as people. And if we don't take care of such habits, then failure will become inevitable. And if you're still wondering how to achieve that, well, let's check out these hacks that we've been talking about all along. You'll find the first hack would be pick 3 things. The principle is pretty straightforward and can be applied to anything. So when you have a long list of overwhelming tasks, just pick 3 things from that list and make them your priority for the day. You'll find that it will help you get started somewhere and enable you to draft a concrete plan with a set timeline without affecting any of the other tasks. And those 3 things can change with time and with the requirements, so there's no hard and fast rule here. However, you'll see that you need to complete whatever you start. That's important. And then the second one would be the Pareto's principle. And the principle results are actually known as the 80-20 rules. And this states that 80% effects are coming from 20% causes, which can better be explained at 80% of the revenue comes from 20% of the clients. And it can be applied to any task. And the idea is that 80% of the work produced while working on a task comes from 20% of the time that you've invested in it. And the only factor that you need to take care of is your dedication towards it. And so in accordance to the principle, you can segregate your tasks by deciding how much percentage of the efficiency and devotion that you want to give for each one of them. Because not everything can be 100%. So once you do that, it will help you manage your time and your tasks much more effective and efficiently. So on more backlogs, if you try to give 100% effort into every task and expect 100% positive results, then you are truly in for a huge disappointment. And the third thing is, eat that frog. It's based on Mark Twain's theory that if you start each day by eating a live frog, the rest of the day will be some kind of cakewalk. And this means that the worst thing that could have happened has happened. So you can take on anything else that the day is throwing at you. Sounds quite simple, right? And if you apply the same principle at work, that is, pick out the worst and the most challenging task on your to-do list and complete that one first. Then there's no stopping you from conquering the rest of the day and the rest of the tasks. And it will also boost your confidence and enhance your productivity significantly. And this will enable you to finish tasks much quicker. And the fourth one would be keep distractions at bay, especially things like phones, social media accounts. Many of the studies have actually found that we waste a significant part of our day on our phones, looking at things, like social media websites. And this not only takes away productive hours from our schedule, but it also tires the eyes and the mind. And a tired brain cannot be efficient and productive. And this leads to a substantial reduction in our work output. So if you want to get things done at the earliest and go back home with a relaxed and triumphant state of mind, then the best advice is keep off the phone while you're at work, and you'll notice notable results in a very short time. And the fifth one, the Pomodoro technique. You'll find that this technique states that if you want to accomplish any tasks, then you should start by setting a timer for 30 minutes. Squeeze as much work as you can in that half hour, and then take a strict 5-minute break. You'll notice a considerable improvement in your efficiency because you're always in a race against time. And this not only adds a thrill to your tasks, but it also encourages your mind to think and execute much faster. This technique has a proven success record of enhancing the productivity manifolds, and it also makes sure that your work is completed within a deadline because your mind is actually working with a timer. And if your priorities are straight, then you can accomplish tasks in an unrealistic time. Then the sixth one is team building activities. Since various team building exercises, help recognize the strengths and weaknesses of employees of different departments, they can be used to understand what kind of work should be assigned to them. Many team building ideas can be used to keep the employees entertained and feel positive about their peers and the organization itself. And it's a proven fact that if the employees are happy with the work culture and the environment, the productivity will improve remarkably. So what does this mean? You'll see that, make a to-do list today, include the critical tasks of your day, set a deadline for those tasks, and use all these methods to accomplish them within this time frame. That's what will help in completing the task and improving your mood, your knowledge, your abilities, the traits that will further benefit your work and your personal life. So improving work efficiency is essential for growth and for your success. There are obviously many hacks that can help in increasing your productivity. Only a handful of them are actually reliable and effective. And it also depends on different individuals, especially mindsets and the work conditions, because the hacks are quite straightforward. However, the hard part is being constant with these practices because you will not notice results right away. It takes time for our minds to get acquainted with a particular method and to utilize this to its fullest potential. And just taking a slight tangent, I would like to take some time to, just talk a bit about SEO versus PPC, which is pay-per-click. And we want to see which one is creating more advantages, just for a short detour. And the question would be, are you investing into a new business and you're not really sure how to promote it? Because it's very common. And if the answer is yes, then you need to understand the importance of brand presence. So when it comes to increased visibility on searches, you find people often get confused against choosing between search engine optimization or pay-per-click. Both of the digital marketing techniques actually serve the same purpose, but they still differ. They differ with having a different set of advantages and disadvantages. And so let's look into those, because the decision to opt for SEO or PPC depends on the goal that your business has. So what we want to do is kind of look into the benefits and the drawbacks of both SEO and pay-per-click programs. So let's look at SEO. So with search engine optimization, this occurs when a website is optimized for higher rankings within the search results. And the most profound search engine, which would be Google, it's featuring more than 200 factors that actually decide whether a website will be ranked within the search results or not. And since it allows you to show up on organic searches, it's completely free. So after acquiring higher ranking on these search result pages, the results remain live for a while, and they'll increase the chances of sustained traffic to your website. And the organic results avail via SEO because of the click-through rate. And SEO is basically a long-term process that takes time to show up for results and to be indexed for certain search terms. And technically, SEO is free, but to optimize a website fully, via this process, it requires a lot of resources and time. And SEO is much beyond optimizing a website and allowing its content to rank higher on the search engines. It's also related to the authority on a given topic. There are some other well-known search engines like Yahoo, Bing, Google, and these observe how users interact with the website. And then if we look at pay-per-click on the other hand, it's a model in which a business needs to pay for each click that their ad gets. Advertising via search engine is actually the most common version of pay-per-click, and this happens when you bid for your advertisement to display when the individual search a keyword that is relevant to the business that's being offered. And PPC advertising is majorly used on social media platforms like Facebook, where the ads can be served as individual's demographic interests or some kind of specifications that the brand would have chosen. And the best part about pay-per-click is that once it's launched, the increase in traffic is immediate. That's one of the most distinct differences. And there are a plethora of platforms that are available for pay-per-click. But you need to select an offer that helps you in reaching your desired goal. And PPC definitely has higher conversions than organic traffic. And one of the disadvantages of PPC campaigns is that businesses need to pay for their campaigns to appear. And the rise in traffic may be immediate. That's one of the advantages, but it's vital to practice PPC smartly to achieve optimal results. And it's been observed that businesses lose money from PPC campaigns, especially if they fail to execute them properly. The question is, are organic searches better than pay-per-click? And the greatest advantage of SEO is bringing in quality leads and organic traffic. And so in the long run, SEO is the one that brings fruitful results. Because there are many users on the web who believe in ignoring the paid results when searching on the web. And according to some of the trustworthy resources, it has been found that customers are more likely to trust the organic searches than the ads. So when your business ranks higher on Google via the keyword phrase, it gives a positive signal that you will be seen as a credible source in your industry. So assuming that SEO is completely free is definitely not a good way to go about the thought. It's important that you understand it will cost you something, either your time, your resources, to bring some sort of fruitful result. So which strategy should you adopt? Well, answering this question would be kind of complicated. Something like this depends, because there are multiple factors that go into deciding which of the two is right for your business. When it comes to a long-term strategy, SEO is definitely the right choice. And some of the SEO efforts, like a properly optimized content and page speed, will actually offer better user experience than the ones visiting via PPC. And all these things keep a visitor engaged, thereby making it less likely that they will abandon the website. And so in short words, before starting off, it's important that you consider the objective of your business. Also, there are needs for questions that need to be answered while considering whether you want to go with SEO or pay-per-click. So what would make pay-per-click the better choice? Well, you'll find there are multiple advantages of choosing PPC over SEO. If your pay-per-click is set up correctly, if it's correctly set up, there are chances you'll get a significant return on investment, and this depends upon who is paying how much to show up better on searches. And other advantages that pay-per-click offer is the power to advertise on other websites that have greater traffic as well that's relevant to you. And the bottom line would be here that when choosing between SEO and PPC, what works best for you depends on multiple factors. PPC will offer an initial jolt to your digital marketing efforts, and to get the best out of PPC, it's important to acquire training and certification to understand what you're doing. And on the other hand, you'll find SEO takes a bit of time to bring the most qualified leads, and SEO's results are simply unmatchable. So when done and planned in the right direction, both SEO and PPC will get you on the front page of a search engine. And if you're profitable with PPC, you can invest to acquire a huge clientele base. And businesses should consider using PPC to test their conversion rates at the beginning and offer a stream of traffic after algorithm updates, and SEO is the one that's offering the higher ROI over the duration of a given campaign. And it's therefore important to incorporate both the strategies in SEM campaigns, keeping in mind that the business objective, that's the most important thing. And it's important to have a diversified game plan for both of them, whether it's SEO or PPC, and knowing that each technique has its own advantages and drawbacks. It is hard to identify which one is actually good and which one is bad. It really depends. It depends on your business and what your business needs. And also, you must consider your budget and how much efforts you are willing to invest in making your business successful on the web. At Store and Host, we have offers to help you with your SEO and PPC campaigns. That was a small little detour, and let's get back to Agile, and let's have a look at how having a lean Agile mindset can benefit your Agile teams. Well, the combination of the lean thinking and the Agile manifesto concepts creates the lean Agile mindset. Lean and Agile complement each other to yield better results in the shortest and sustainable time with the highest level of delivery. And the lean Agile mindset is adopted by leaders who have a clear understanding of the principle of lean and Agile. And so to develop the lean Agile mindset, the fundamentals of lean and Agile have to actually be understood. Because Agile is providing a set of principles that produce high quality software in short increments by adapting to the changing requirements with continuous delivery. And based on the actual manifesto of Agile Manifesto, it came from the Waterfall model. It was a real step up from the Waterfall model. And the Agile Manifesto is stating that individuals and interactions over processes and tools. That was a very important part in working software over comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration should be over contract negotiation, responding to the change over following a plan. And so here are some of the tricks that are involved in becoming agile. It encourages being adaptive and responsive to change. It promotes increased collaboration and interaction among individuals. And shorter planning of iterations results in creating tangible value and developing software faster in increments to get feedback in the shortest amount of time. And Agile has sprints to focus on agile delivery of customer value artifacts. It aligns each person's job to the customer value and sets the role and the responsibilities of the people for the work that they need to do and sets a boundary for the work done. And Agile is not a methodology, rather an umbrella of values and principles. And Scrum, Kanban, or XP are ways to become agile. And Lean is centered on preserving value with less work. It's a long-term business strategy that focuses on manufacturing and production to maximize customer value while considering the expenditure of resources. So it takes them to view the overall system beyond the development team, focusing on how the organization is delivering its value. And Lean principles are as follows. 1. Respect for people. Thoroughly understanding the customer's values and to work at their speed to create products that satisfy their needs. Another thing is don't let the customer wait and avoid delays. The delays must be avoided. Build the relationships on trust. Respect for people is very essential for Lean because the people in the upper level of management are involved in the individual's development level, especially at the development level. And together, they are identifying the problem, what is causing the problem, how to solve the problem, and agreeing on a mutual solution to solve the problem. And it gives the team a purpose and a vision to work on. And the second thing is flow. And this works on the plan, do, check, act method of problem-solving improvement. And the processes are organized, managed, and measured around value streams. And waste elimination is recognizing and eliminating activities that have no value. And these activities include partially done work, handoffs, or switching tasks. It limits the amount of work that has to be done, and this helps in maintaining a continuous and sustainable workflow to build higher quality products. Faster the products are built, the lesser the cost. And then the third thing would be innovation. Provides ample room for creativity. And the fourth one would be relentless improvement, because the entire value stream has to be considered from its concept to improve quality and flow of value. A retrospective of the activities done. This is implemented by lean agile teams consisting of 5 to 10 members who are actually cross-functional, self-organizing, and self-managing, best in their nature. And these teams are part of the agile release train. And the benefits of adopting the lean agile mindset, this creates effective leaders that empower the individuals and their teams. And these leaders are ensuring that their team members possess the ability and the authority to define, to build, to test, deploy in every iteration. And all the members share the common vision and contribute in every way to attain success. Innovation and creativity is supported and encouraged in these environments. And most importantly, it promotes building relationships based on trust amongst the team members, and maintaining trust with the customer in providing fast and high quality delivery of software. So let's look at some of the top agile myths and misconceptions in agile project management. And apart from the fact that most of the software companies claim to implement agile methodologies, there are still common misconceptions and myths about agile that are actually necessary to debunk now and forever. So let's go through them, because this will not only help the ones that are actually implementing agile to avoid common pitfalls, but it will make companies understand agile much more and to realize its benefits. It will help them embrace the change and ultimately improving prototyping processes. You can even plan to take agile training to learn more from various agile certification bodies to follow the principles of agile manifesto in the best way for you. So let's get started with this, and let's talk about these common myths of agile. The first one would be that agile projects don't give budget estimates. As in traditional development methodologies like Waterfall, when projects are scope boxed, given the list of requirements along with their estimates, the schedule and budgets are derived from these estimates completely. And since the Waterfall model focus end-to-end development and delivery estimation is also provided without going much into the detail, those estimates are provided at the beginning of each phase. So the risk is, if that estimate is actually wrong, which is normally the case, normally iteration cycles become really long. And since estimations cannot be totally accurate, and if in the middle of each iteration something needs to be redone or extend the scope, it takes much longer to refocus and re-estimate. So this makes the projects delay much longer than with agile methodologies if they would be used in that case. So it's easier to have detailed planning for the next weeks than for a few years. And that's really the main difference between Agile and Waterfall when coming to estimation. Scrum and Extreme Programming are Agile methodologies that use the time boxing concept, as by doing this, delays can be optimized, planning can be detailed. Since the focus is very short, we tend to see things more closely and do it better, even if we fail to do it completely. Whatever we do is still aligned with the goal. And this leads to the fact that estimates are worthy of not only for the task's turnaround time, but also provide overall completion of goal by looking at a small piece of time boxes. And other benefits that the estimates provide is that the teams work for a predefined fixed period and getting maximum done in that period as they can. And the teams can use estimations to calculate how many sprints are actually needed to develop all the requirements. But each sprint is actually a fixed cost. And this eases the process of budgeting. the Agile team, after a few sprints, can utilize the average team velocity to have some sort of visibility about the future regarding the larger releases or the deliverables. And that gives a powerful tool for the product owner to have some sort of estimate about how long it will take to deliver a feature on a product, and to understand what will be the cost budget based on the number of sprints needed to complete a feature or a product. And the second thing would be that Agile is not for fixed bid projects, because fixed big projects is where products or services need to be fixed on an agreed cost or budget. And Agile fit well with this kind of products. And because of the methodologies and the characteristics of Agile and having the short and quick feedback loop with the customer, since the cost is fixed, so we need to make sure that what every Scrum team is working on is still within the agreed scope. We have to look into the regular sprint demo, close cooperation with the customer to help narrow the gap, which enables the team to focus completely on the product. And in an Agile product, if it's fixed term nature, the responsibility of the product owner becomes more challenging, because he needs to ensure that the requirements are prioritized correctly and in order and scoped out, making sure that the scope does not change. The next thing would be that Agile equals no commitment. And one of the popular myths is that Agile teams do not commit, as they generally 6 to 8 developers who work until they confirm that they're actually done. And in contrast to it, successful Agile teams are transparent and realistic when it comes to their promises. You'll find XP and Scrum have a sprint backlog concept, which includes the list of items that will be developed during a sprint. And though the newest version of Scrum backs off the strength of commitment, usually for some Scrum teams, the sprint backlog, the backlog items, are treated as a contract that the team will deliver all the items that it committed in that sprint only. And however, XP permits the change, especially if the team collectively agrees on the item to be replaced is not being started yet. And in Scrum and XP, deferment is not really treated lightly and is taken as an exceptional occurrence. And this regular cadence and commitment to delivering software in small increments develop trust among the team members and other involved parties, like the users, the customers, and the stakeholders. So the teams that follow the latest teachings on Scrum do not promise on the sprint scope. And this eliminates the idea of scope boxing, as it is a dangerous game to play. Scrum teams should focus on rapid feedback loops, collaboration, and constant communication and transparency to implement Agile successfully. So usually when teams are communicative, the demand for an ironclad commitment, becomes much less. And so the resultant trust and collaboration from the teams, this overrides the outdated necessity for commitments. And as compared to Waterfall projects that are based on estimates and teams, they don't really deliver what they promised, according to Waterfall. And let's look at the fourth aspect. Agile projects don't involve business analysts, because Scrum does not use business analyst term and instead refers to the product owner. And this leads to a single point of contact for the team. So when they have questions regarding anything, they can refer to this. And this doesn't mean that business analysts are not included in Agile projects. In contrast, the domain-specific knowledge that business analysts have is an essential asset to the product owner. And the experts actually help compose the backlog items and assist in concluding priority and orders. XP doesn't enroll a single role like Scrum's product owners, but it takes business analysts and customers as a collaborative team that decides the priority and order of the backlog items. Teams can be divided into feature teams when Agile projects scale, and these teams will still be dependent on the users, business analysts, and customers to craft a backlog for each of these features and the complete backlog of the project. And let's look at program increment for the planning release for the train RTE, in SAFe. And you'll find that As a release training engineer, it's important that you facilitate the increment planning session, which can seem very overwhelming if you've never done it before. And here's some helpful tips that can help prepare you for the PI planning session, whether it's your first time or if it's simply something that you want to further your drive for relentless improvement. So the first thing, secure an executive sponsor, because having an executive sponsor in your session is a great way to get the top-down, bottom engagement. Ask your executive to join, even if it's just to open the PI planning session. Have them give a brief overview of why you're doing this program, and it will help the team to see the engagement and the commitment throughout the company and help the executive understand how the day-to-day work is actually done. And the executive sponsors are typically very busy, so be sure that you have a slot in their calendars as early as possible to ensure that they will attend. And another thing is schedule a pre-planning session. In this session, invite all relevant team members, which can include Scrum Masters, lead developers, lead architects, and product owners for all teams that will be in the PI session. Then the next thing would be, during the pre-planning session, find a room large enough to accommodate the entire team, and arrange for things like food and coffee to be available throughout the day. And prepare the 2-day PI session. Make sure there's an agenda and send out the agenda to the whole team in advance. So once the session is complete, it's always a good idea to get drinks and go out to eat together to ensure the team building. And then the next thing will be arrange 2 separate feature briefing sessions and schedule these two feature briefing sessions 2 weeks prior to the PI session to ensure that everyone from business, architecture, development teams, and management are fully aligned on the scope. And the next thing would be ensure that the features are ready as candidates for the PI session. Ensure that the product owners and managers are having continuous refinement sessions and are involved in the business and all needed teams, so that there are as few open points as possible in the PI session. Feature visualization and their dependencies on a simple board will highlight the underlying problems that the RTE should focus on, and it will help to prepare the things that are crucial for the upcoming PI. The next thing is ensure engagement with the system architecture team. You should involve the system architecture team to ensure architecture runway and enabled, so that the enablers are in good shape for the planning session. And then PI execution. In this, what's meant here is, ensure all participants are engaged and make sure you have the right people in the room. Ensure that there is a constant dialogue among the team members by walking around the room and asking questions to the team, such as, do any of your feature stories have dependencies on any of the other teams? And if they do, just ensure that the 2 teams get a chance to discuss, and have periodic 15-minute Scrum meetings during the team breakout sessions to ensure that all teams are working towards a common goal. Make sure that the dependencies are identified, understood, and are marked on the program board. Ensure that the program board is visible in the PI session, indicating the progress of the team collaboration and the brainstorming. And have a designated swim lane for the teams that are participating on the program board, and improvise if non-conventional things like environments, legal, or other dependencies are actually required, and make a special swim lane and put all those activities as enablers to make sure that there are visible dependencies on the program board. And the next thing would be tools. Use a tool that's synchronizing the team level user stories, especially their status and the progress in the program level board. Check out Venture Hub for this. That can help you with your agile release trains as well. And another thing is arrange an evening after the first day of the PI session and use the opportunity to have everyone together to arrange dinner, get some drinks so you can create an environment where people can have fun and build relationships with the other teams. And you'll find this to be a very great side benefit of the PI session, and often issues that come up during the PI will be resolved sooner if the individuals actually have a personal relationship with one another. And the last thing will be, the closing of the PI. Run a short retrospection on the PI session at the end of the second day, and this will ensure that you're constantly improving. Agree on the days and the dates for regular sessions like Scrum of Scrums, Inspect and Adapt, PO meetings, integration meetings, and agree on the next PI session dates. And the last thing would be to clean the rooms and have goodbyes. So let's look at some of the best practices for your daily Scrum meetings. And you'll find that a daily Scrum or a stand-up is a 15 to about 30 minutes meeting for teams to meet and to synchronize their activities. And it's an opportunity to fine-tune daily priorities, understand what is being done by each team member, and how they can help each other to deliver the sprint goal. And the purpose of the meeting is collaboration and the status update. And some of the best practices would be, strictly time boxed. Set the expectations with your team and make it clear that the team will always start at end at a certain point in time. So start regardless of who is there. Just start with whoever is present, and you will see the latecomers will try harder the next day. And have each team member run through the following questions, like things like, what did you do yesterday? What is the plan for today? Are there any impediments? Use the due dates, because the due dates are a good way to communicate what is planned to be completed. And if you're running Agile in a large enterprise, then the simple task can be a way of eliminating many status meetings from external teams and management. You should update the sprint board. Have the team update their user stories and tasks before the start of the meeting. And it's especially important for virtual teams. Include all the team members. Everybody that's responsible for the sprint delivery should be included in this meeting. And a quick final note, in order to work effectively, a daily Scrum meeting should not be viewed as a status update or a progress tracking meeting, because that way you'll quickly lose excitement and buy-in. You lose the excitement if it's approached this way. It should be viewed as a chance to ensure collaboration among the team members and to resolve impediments as a team. It is important to remember that the definition of a successful sprint, it's team members committed to delivering sprint content and working together as one unit and supporting each other to achieve the sprint goals. And how you can use Yodais for your Scrum meetings. You find that the Yodai sprint board has some things that can help you to be more efficient. And it's important to have your sprint analytics in check, because it's a fast and easy way to get your speed before your daily Scrum. It provides an overview of the total stories. You can see the total stories, the completed stories, the progress, and the burn down charts. And so your swim lanes, you should view everything assigned to each team member by using the responsible swim lane. And you can switch to things like epic or release lane if that's required. And then of course you have to look at your due dates calendar, because this is a visual representation of the sprint content based on the due dates. The stories and tasks without assigned due dates, these should be shown separately. And you can drag and drop items to set the dates. Then you have to look at the activities feed, which is a fast and easy way to view all the updates for the sprint. So let's see how we can get your sprint planning effective, because the sprint planning sessions are one of the key activities to ensure a successful execution of your Agile projects. And if this is done correctly, it will help to ensure that you have the commitment and buy-in from each team member to deliver the content to the best of their ability. And the sprint planning session is the collaborative meeting in which the team estimates the size of the user stories, because this breaks down stories into tasks and commits to deliver the stories during a sprint as per the predetermined and agreed upon definition of done. So what you will need, you need time like 2 to 4 hours depending on the team, and the complexity of the sprint. And you'll need an office that's large enough to accommodate the entire team. You need a visual workspace for a sticky note board. So you'll need sticky notes in at least 3 different colors. And it's good to have some light refreshments, things like coffee. And let's check out some tips to get the most out of your sprint planning session and execute your project successfully. One of the things would be, set the sprint goal. Ask the product owner to come up with the goal of the sprint and show the happy path to capture the customer order with the billing preferences. You should prioritize the stories that fulfill the sprint goal, because once the goal is established, prioritize the stories that fulfill that goal. If you find your team has additional capacity available, then you can consider prioritizing additional stories that don't necessarily complement the sprint goal. Arrange an informal sprint planning preparation meeting, because before the actual sprint planning session, bring relevant team members up to speed on the expectations for the next sprint and which stories the business needs to be delivered. And use it as a sanity check to make sure that the stories planned are actually doable and don't have any known hard blockers, because you'll find it helps reduce the number of surprises that might come up during that session. Another thing is the meeting arrangements. Send the invite. Make sure that you have a video call set up if part of your team is remote. Print the sprint goal and put it somewhere prominent in the meeting room. Have different color sticky notes that are available, like we said before. Write down the velocity of the team in bold letters. Write down the agreed reference velocity. The velocity is important, which can be the last sprint velocity or an average of the last 3 sprints. And if it's your team's first sprint, you can use a reference velocity of 8 story points per developer per sprint. And make sure that it's clear what each color sticky represents. So for example, green is for user stories, blue is for tasks, and purple is for bugs. That would be an example of how you could do it. And make sure there's refreshments. Coffee is always something that's appreciated. So if it can be there, make sure it's there. And have the stories written on the stickies and arrange on the wall in the priority order. And for remote teams, be sure to do the same for either the sprint or the backlog. And the other thing would be the introduction of the candidate stories. Let the product owner, explain the purpose and details for each of the top stories that can be picked up in the sprint. And if the team has any questions, that would be the time to ask. Then of course, the sizing of the stories. Teams can do the sizings of the stories like using the techniques like polka planning. And if the team is not experienced in sizing stories, you can use the t-shirt sizing method as a way to base the estimate on the complexity of implementation. And we recommend using the following t-shirt size stories for point comparison. So you can have like t-shirt sizing XS, S, M, M plus, L, XL, XXL, XXXL. Then you have your story points, and you can have them like 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 20, 40. And break down stories into tasks. Make sure that the team has broken down the stories into tasks, because this will help the team to think about everything that needs to be done to complete the stories. It's also good practice to create testing as a separate task, because when estimating tasks, some find it helpful to estimate tasks in hours, because this is easier for teams and individuals to do their own tracking. And another thing should be the agreement on the bug fixes and the support work. So agree on the percentage of the capacity that will be used for bug fixes and support work. That's if any of it is there. And there are several ways to account for this. You can use a fixed capacity such as 20% for bug fixes and other support work, and have the bugs linked to a user story, and then size the story with bug fixes included so that there's no fixed reserved capacity. And make sure that the story definition of done includes testing and bug fixes, because this helps to deliver better quality software at the end of each sprint. And you should set due dates, because it's helpful to have rough plans, when each story will tentatively be done. And using due dates is a good mechanism for driving and tracking progress, and it's especially useful for testing and external stakeholder communications. And effective work days are important. And to calculate the potential impact on sprint velocity, be sure to record the team's days off, holidays, and any other events that can affect the sprint delivery. So let's look at what could help you have a successful Agile project kickoff. So you've been assigned a project and now the real work begins. And like most of the things, setting the stage at the beginning is critical to the project's success. You must have a kickoff meeting purpose, and the kickoff meeting purpose brings the customer and the team together to start building a successful relationship, and it can work as a catalyst to break the ice and jumpstart development. So here's some tips for your first kickoff meeting. One of the things is the participants. It's good to have a short kickoff meeting with the team members who are going to work on the project. And if the team members are remote, it's a good idea to ensure that you have a video call in place. This will help establish a better connection to the rest of the team. And here's a list of individuals that you should include in the meeting: the developers, the UI and the UX workers, the architects, team leaders, testers, and be sure to include the integration testing team members if there's a separate integration team environment. And live collaboration, set up the project team room in a live chat environment like Slack or Venture Hub's live chat and get responses quickly. You can also set this up with Skype and WhatsApp just to keep the communication open. You should also set expectations. During the kickoff meeting, be sure to have the team agree on the following items: the sprint duration, preferably like 2 weeks. Find out the start of the first sprint, the sprint demo day, the demo environment. Check the feedback session, an informal show and tell where the feedback is given on the ongoing development of stories. Scrum call cadence, and ideally this should happen daily, but you can also agree on a different cadence that works best for your team, in which they share their updates, especially any impediments, and avoid using email if possible. Another thing is resource allocation. Establish who will be working at 100% capacity, and for those working part-time, be sure that it's agreed and clear to everyone which days and time they will be available. Customer participation is important. It's a bonus if you are able to actually have the customer join the meeting to discuss the priorities, the expectations, and what the release project means to them, because this can provide a better mental context to the team as to why they're building this, for whom, and the impact that it will have for the customer. So let's, in closing, look at Agile versus prototyping. So, the first question would be, what is prototyping? Because it's an attractive and feasible model for those complex and large systems which have no manual process or assisting system for determining the requirements. And prototyping is based on known requirements. And prototype gives clients the actual feel of the system, and it also helps the clients have a better understanding of the system requirements. And prototype is not a complete system itself, and many details are not built in the prototype model, because the basic goal of prototype model is to provide a system which gives overall functionality. And this model is used when the client is not sure about the project requirements. So close communication between the company and the client is important for the prototype model's success. And the first initial prototype is presented to the client. And prototype is an iterative process which finalizes the product with different trial and error. So let's look at the Agile versus Waterfall difference in software development methodologies. And so the first thing would be the conceptions, because there are 4 prototype model conceptions: patched up prototypes, non-operational scale models, first full scale models, essential system features prototype. And let's look at some guidelines for prototype models. We need to work in manageable models. The modules should be manageable, and modify the prototype in successive iterations, and build the prototype rapidly, and the stress UI. And then some prototype model advantages, obtain the user feedback in initial stages of the project. And the initial project estimate that either the project can successfully meet the deadlines or not, because it reduces the expenses. It also allows to make changes in finished product. And the users are involved in the development process. And this methodology provides a working model to her users, which gives the users a better understanding of their system. And the errors are detected in this kind of methodology much earlier than in others. And missing functionalities are easily identified. It also provides the option to stop developing on any unworkable system. And the developed program is closely related to the user's expectation and needs. And the other thing is the prototype model disadvantages. Let's look at that. It's really a slow processing methodology. And this system first lead to the implementation of system and then preparing the way. And this is the really complex system, and scope of system expands beyond the original plans. Incomplete applications are often not usable in these cases, and the insufficient analysis is another disadvantage of prototype model. And users mostly get confused in the prototype system because sometimes the final system is not as the initial prototype was. And too many changes are disturbing the developer's rhythm. And the user's demanded features are sometimes misunderstood by the developers because of too much user involvement. When the user is involved too much, and because of iterative and rapid nature of managing the prototype process is really a difficult task. It's important that there's clear communication with the end users. It's very essential. And you have to know when to use the prototype model. So development teams are actually using prototype model when they want to add a user's interaction in the project. And mostly online systems and web interfaces, these highly need a user's interaction in the project. The system gives ease of use, and end users need very minimal training. And in prototype development methodology, the end users are constantly kept in touch with development process, and their feedbacks are valued, which makes the system very usable. And prototype development methodology is very good for designing the CIS, the computer interface system. And we use the prototype model when we need lots of end user interaction in the desired system. And let's look at the Agile methodology, because in Agile, development is divided into small iterations, which are called sprints. And this is a better development methodology due to its continuous planning, testing, integration, risk evaluation, and control of the progress of the project, and thereupon reducing the chances of the project failing. And Agile is used to plan quickly, develop quickly, release quickly, and to revise quickly. And this methodology is at least one step forward than Waterfall. Agile methodology was created after facing a lot of disadvantages of the Waterfall in many procedures. And rather than working in sequential design like Waterfall, Agile works in incremental approach. In Agile, a project is converted into small parts, known as the sprints, like we said. And each sprint can be completed using Waterfall steps like conception, initiation, analysis, design, construction, testing, implementation, and finally maintenance. That's why we can say Agile is like a micro waterfall. We split work into tasks and then run waterfall process on each task. And what are some of the Agile values? We'd have things like communication, simplicity, feedback, and courage. And what are the Agile principles? It would be providing rapid feedback, adopting simplicity, changing incrementally, embracing change, and encouraging quality work. And what are some of the Agile activities? It would be coding, testing, listening, designing. And then Agile control variables would be things like time, cost, quality, scope. And if we look at Canva versus Scrum benefits and some of the similarities and some of the pros and cons, would have Agile phases, exploration, planning, the iterations to the first release, product ionizing, maintenance, very important. And then some of the risks, you'll find that there's a culture of organization and the system development team. What's important is timing, cost, clients' reactions, measuring the impact, checking on the, programmers and analysts' individual rights. And then some of the advantages of Agile, because Agile means, moving quickly and indicating the dynamic approach of Agile. And Agile is a flexible methodology. And Agile is very accommodative to changes. And it caters the ever-changing requirements. Its rapid delivery helps to satisfy customers. And there's no guesswork between the development team and the customer. It includes continuous input from the client and face-to-face communication. It's a highly collaborative development process, and it's a continuous improvement process. And the requirements are expected to evolve and change in this process. And it has rapid deployment for work, and its phases are well processed and completed once at a time. And this process helps to measure the progress by the amount of completed work. It's a constant improving process since the changes can be made during the process, and it helps to deliver exactly according to the client's expectations. It's easy to add up-to-date features in the program at any time. And the project priorities are evaluated at the end of every sprint, which helps clients to add their feedback about the product. And in Agile, bugs are solved in each sprint, so there are very less chances that you face any error at the end of the development cycle. And this methodology helps to launch programs at any level. The teams get self-motivated, due to cross-functionality. And tracing progress is very easy in this methodology. The structured backlog helps to monitor the progress. And we can look at some of the disadvantages of the Agile methodology. Basically, if the project manager is not experienced, then the project can become a large series of sprints and come in late and over budget. And this is a less predictable process about the project's output. It's very hard for the client to hand over the project to any other vendor for more development or any maintenance. The final product can actually be very different from the initial plan, and the frequent complaint for every small reason can mentally disturb the developers. And for the completion of the project, every team member should be open-minded and communicative. The product owner and the Scrum Master is highly pressurized in this methodology, and sometimes managing the backlog itself really becomes too much. We can look at the Scrum Master versus the product owner, and the difference is really the skills due to the responsibility. And when you're using Agile, you'll find that the rapid production is more important than the product quality. The client can change the project scope anytime, and the final picture of the project is not really clear all the time. And this methodology is more useful when you have skilled developers who can think independently and capable of adapting every tough project. And rapidly changing standards industries are preferring to use the Agile methodology. And this brings us to the end of this session. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your patience. And I hope you have learned enough about Agile and that you can use it in your own environment.